In our previous demonstration, we have seen that how Terraform works and how it runs and provisions the infrastructure. We have seen how do we create a resource, how we have created a resource group with the Terraform. So when we create a resource from our infrastructure from the Terraform, basically it generates the state file in your directory by default, which we call the local state, and basically the state file holds the desired state of your current infrastructure and the infrastructure which it has deployed last time onto the target platform. So let's say if we are going to modify anything forward now in the resources, then next time it will compare the desired state with the target platform, and then it will generate the plan. You can by default the state files are generated locally on the Terraform directory itself. So if I go to, this is my Terraform state file, so by default the name is given as a terraform.tf state file. This is a JSON representation of all the resources which I have declared in my Terraform directory, whether it is a local resource, variables, output variables, data type, resource type, everything will be mentioned here. So if I expand this particular tf state resource file, this is just a JSON file. As I said, in that we have all our resources and the information about the resources. Now one thing to note here is, if I expand, let's say, storage account, one thing to remember here is this remote state file contains all the information about resources, including some of the sensitive information about the resources. For example, my storage account has got its primary key as well. So think about what if this particular storage account is some of the business critical storage account, and you are keeping the remote state file or the state file here on your local directory, right? And so anybody can get these kind of sensitive value and misutilize that. That's the challenge number one. Now the other challenge we have is, as I'm the only person right now working on this Terraform code, so it's okay to for a while I can consider to be okay to generate the Terraform state on my local and then provision the infrastructure. But what if you have multiple team members, 10 or 20 of them, who are working on the different component of your infrastructure? Some of them are providing the network blocks, some of them are working on some other infrastructure resources, and then if each of them will have their own copy of remote state file, then end of the day when it requires to run full flash, then your infrastructure resources are going to be, or your infrastructure is going to be out of sync. So in order to make it possible so that your entire team is consistently targeting to a single state file, to give it that kind of feature, what Terraform offers the remote backend feature, wherein store the state file into the remote location. How do you define the state file at the remote location? Let's go to the Terraform file, and here you can define it. So here in the Terraform keyword, under the Terraform keyword, you have the keyword called remote or backend, and then backend, what type of backend you would like to choose to store your remote file. For example, I'm working on Azure, so I would prefer to store my state file into Azure backend, Azure RM backend. So basically, Azure RM backend, when you say store the state file in the Azure RM backend, it means that you need to configure the dedicated storage account, and I prefer to create a dedicated storage account for storing all your Terraform state file, and give access only to a specific set of resources, such as the service principal should have access, not any other random user should have access, because as I said, this has some critical information. So when you define the backend, you need to define the backend information, what could be the value of your backend file. So let's see how do you use the backend. So this is a syntax of the backend configurations. You need to define these four properties: the resource group name, storage account name, container name, and key name. So in our Azure subscription, we have a storage account already created, which is this one. Name of the resource group, container name, we already have a container name, and here we are calling dev. Remember, as I said, you need to have a suffix as in tf state, but this name you can give any name. So I'm keeping it as is. Once you do that, basically you should be able to move your current backend file to the remote location. So if I'm going to run the Terraform initialize now, it will ask me, do you want to move or migrate your current state location to some other location? So it's asking for migrating the state file. I'll say yes, and then it will migrate the state file. So I can verify in the remote container. You can see that we have the state file created just now. This is how you can configure and specify the remote state file.